Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Woody Kingman, and I am honored to represent the Blake Alumni Board, which sponsors these events known as Breakfast at Blake. We have gotten off to a great start this year. We had for homecoming our Alumni of the Year, Bruce Dayton, class of 1937, was here. His son has a position over at St. Paul. Spoke as well. It was just a wonderful event. And then we had Elizabeth Redley here in November, Blake parent and movie producer, who entertained us with some of the ins and outs of Hollywood and better yet Minneapolis when it comes to film. In April, we're going to have Robert Keith fly in from his home in Montana, where he has a company that buys old and abused ranch land, fixes it up, and then puts development easements or rather anti-development easements on the property. So that'll be really interesting as well. I hope you can join us for that. Well, today I have the pleasure of introducing Rob Moore, and there is no one less qualified to do so than me. As you can tell, I am vertically challenged and have been my entire life, and Chief Watson told me so in 5th grade when I was playing basketball over in the field house, which also shows how old I am to use that term. But we decided that maybe going out for hockey or skiing would be better for sure. So I don't know a heck of a lot about basketball. I seriously, the only thing that I can see on a basketball court is a double dribble and traveling. I do not understand any other of the infractions. But you know, my daughter has become a basketball fanatic, and she plays over at Providence Academy, who will be hosting Blake tomorrow night. And the Blake boys will be hosting Providence here tomorrow night. And since I'm on the topic, there's a Blake hockey game tonight over in Providence as well. But much more important is that the Timberwolves will be hosting the LA Clippers tonight at Target Arena. I understand that big pile in our speakers' hands are free tickets for everyone. And so, with no further ado, the CEO of the Timberwolves, Mr. Rob.
Thanks, Woody. Well, thank you, Woody, for that nice introduction. And no, I actually don't have free tickets for everyone today. We're trying to make a little bit of money off of this enterprise. Dr. Stavney, thank you for having me here today, and it's just such an honor to come into the Blake community like this and be able to be with you this morning, so thank you for that. When I got this invitation, I was kind of thinking, like, what do I share with this community? This is really a personal thing for us because my family, my son and I have been involved here with Blake since pre-K for 8 years now. He's a 6th grader here on this campus, and so I thought, what would I share with these good folks today? Because I do a lot of chalk talks and things like that. And I thought, well, you know, there's something a little more personal that I really want to tell this group, tell our Blake community, and that is the relevance that what you do here, what goes on in this school, what I've experienced through my son's education, how it relates to what I do. And it's been a kind of a constant source of amazement to me that I come back from learning lunches or different experiences, and I go, wow, that's really relevant to what we do. And let me give you a little bit of my background so you see where I came from, what my perspective is, and then I'll touch on those subjects with you. So I've had a really unusual but neat career, just opportunities that when I talk to student groups and they say, like, how did you get to where you are today? I kind of give them my career path, and it sort of makes sense, but when it happened, it just happened haphazardly. It was never by design, but I started off in the music industry just because I was passionate about it, and when I got out of school, I said, I want to work at something that I love and that is fun, and I went to work in the record industry, and I'm sure my parents were thrilled because after supporting me all through college, I went and got a job at the lowest entry level possible. If I'd made it to the mailroom, that would have been a promotion. And so I worked in the music industry for a couple of years, and then was working on soundtracks. I was on the studio lot working on a movie, and I went by the employment office. They didn't call it HR back then. That term hadn't come about that early, but I saw a job. I applied for the job, and I got the job, and I moved into the film industry. And I was there for a number of years, almost a decade, in movies, motion pictures. As a matter of fact, your last speaker, I kind of wanted to come and hear her because the industry has evolved so much since I left. I kind of want to hear how that is going. But then a movie producer I knew, and this is the haphazard part of my career, a movie producer I knew came to me and said, I'd like to talk to you about a job. And I thought, cool, get to go work for a small production company and find out about that. And so I go talk to him and he says, I'm a hockey fan and I'm thinking of buying the LA Kings and I'd like you to help me run it and work with Dr. Jerry Buss of the Lakers and the Kings and the Forum in Los Angeles. And eventually I'll buy the whole thing, you can run the team for me. And I thought, sports, wow, that's not my background, but I'll give it a try. And I got into sports, and the first thing I discovered within a year was the part that had attracted me to entertainment, the passion, the enjoyment that audiences and crowds have in music concerts or watching a movie just lives. It's so vibrant in sports that while I was in the motion picture industry, I had the ability, I started off as an estimator, I was in production, all kinds of different jobs, but I could walk around the lot, go onto any soundstage, watch anything, and I thought, this is cool, and I'll always have a standing invitation for my friends to come down and we'll watch a TV show being filmed or a movie being filmed. Nobody ever took me up on that. No one was really interested. They liked going to the movies, but they didn't necessarily want to see one being made. Transition to me working for the LA Kings, we get Gretzky, first year I'm there, everybody I know is calling me up for tickets. And they have, on top of that, they all have opinions like, you should change your goalie and this, that, and the other. And I just thought, like, what an impressive, what a wonderful medium this is, because it really elicits the opinions and the passion and the interest of the fans. And so I've now been in sports almost 25 years, and I have to just tell you, I fell in love with it, and it's a wonderful, wonderful place. My role in sports, even though I'm running the team, is I always want to be on the audience's side. I'm just a fan. When it comes down, when the game time starts and it's tip-off, I'm a fan. I watch the game. I want to be in the same place that you are, watching the game the same way that you are. And so I don't pretend to be an expert or anything like that, and that's for my coaches, that's for all those guys to do. I know how everything works, but I want to enjoy it just the same way you do. So that's a little bit of my background. That's my perspective on our sport and on our game. But what I want to share with you is some of the things that I learned as I started looking into, my little boy as he got into school age, and we started looking at the schools here. First, I was struck by how great the schools are in Minnesota. I mean, I'm from Los Angeles, and I fear to think, like, what it would be like to try to get a kid into a nice school in LA. That, it'd be like I have a friend with the Yankees, and his kids go to school in Manhattan. Oh my God, the stories he tells me, how hard it is to get into those schools and that. So I just felt so fortunate to be here in Minnesota with such great schools. And as I was going through the admissions process, the things that the admissions folks and other parents shared with me while we were looking at Blake really resonated, and I noticed very quickly how much education has evolved since I was a kid in school. And that was a long time ago, and I barely remember it, but I'll tell you, third grade now is not like third grade was in my day. But one of the things that really stood out to me about Blake and why we ultimately chose Blake is that they said that there's a focus here on collaborative learning, on the kids working together to solve problems, whatever it might be, and how much milk a whale baby drinks, or whatever the issue was that they put forth for kids to work on. And I think even this last term, J-term, whatever that thing was called, I think that has a collaborative underlying theory to it that is so fundamental to what we do in sports. And it exists in such a very defined space on the team specifically. It's, of course, collaboration is part of all businesses and any interactions with anybody in any aspect of industry of America. But on a team, one of the things that's beautiful about sports is that everything is distilled down to the moment. I mean, these folks have to collaborate in the microsecond, and some of the really big issues in terms of collaboration are really fundamental to what we do when we run a team, what we try to develop in our players. It's trust and predictability. So, in the case of collaboration among these kids, the fact that they're learning to trust each other, to say that, I'm good at this and maybe you're good at that, and we'll collaborate together. Well, on a team, let me give you an example of one of the things we talk about, but we cannot teach it, it just happens. And that's the trust that goes on in a defensive play. In a defensive play, the players, to play defense really effectively, You have to be able to occasionally double team, triple team if you need to, off of a player, which means you leave the player that you're defending, you leave them alone. You have to trust that your teammate is going to pick them up. And it starts a domino effect. Not only is one of your teammates going to pick up your player, somebody's going to pick up their player, and it's a domino effect. This happens in the microsecond. And it is something that you just, as much as we talk about it, it only happens on its own when these players really get to know each other and they really sync up. So for us to try to get there, we don't just have the coach that. We actually take them bowling, we go have dinners together. We do all these things to establish that relationship so that they can perform at that level. Predictability is also a huge part of that. One of the great pleasures of my career is having worked with some absolutely amazing athletes. So I worked with Wayne Gretzky, I worked with Magic Johnson. Now I have Ricky Rubio, who's one of these savants of the game as well. But one time I was waiting for a bus. I used to travel a lot more with the team. And one time I was waiting for a bus, and Wayne was standing right next to me, and he had done one of his ridiculous no-look passes the night before. I think we were in St. Louis. We beat the team with Wayne, playing extraordinarily as he normally did. And as he did more often than not, he was able to do one of those no-look passes, behind the back and right on Yari Curry's stick, and Yari scores, one-times it. And I asked him, Wayne, how did you hit Yari right on his stick? How did you pass? You weren't even looking at him. He was behind you. And Wayne's answer was, well, I just feel where he is. And the way what I took that to mean is, Wayne was saying, I have this movie in my head of where all the players are. Because they're so good, I can predict what they're going to do. They're very consistent, and I can predict what they're going to do. Therefore, I can trust them. That is the highest and perhaps the most distilled aspect of collaboration, that you trust each other, you know the performance you're going to get out of each other, and that is when that comes together in a team, then you have a really magic team happening. So another thing that I would share with you that is part of the Blake experience that I've had here is something that you do so very well here is you get to know the kids. You get to know your students so very well. And while that makes a parent feel fantastic, what I would tell you is that is one of the big evolutions in sports since I've been in it. Is it used to be one size fits all. Head coach tells you what's happening, you just go out and do it, and everybody's treated pretty much the same. Well, now if you look at a Timberwolves bench, and you might wonder who all those guys are in suits sitting behind the team. Well, now it's a lot of our players because they're all injured. But in a normal season where our players are actually dressed in their uniforms, all those gentlemen sitting behind the team, they're all our coaches. And why do we have so many coaches? Well, our teacher-to-student ratio is really high. It's about one coach to every two players. And we come at these players from all kinds of different angles. So clearly there's the skill. It starts with the strategy. Our head coach gives you the strategy, tells you the style, tells you where you're going to go. But then the work of all of those folks are to get our players to perform and to be able to react in all those situations very, very customized. We get to each one of them, and we understand that in some cases, well, first of all, with the skills, we have the bigs. Jack Sikma, who's our big, our former center with Seattle, he teaches the bigs. Terry Porter, a guard who's now head coach right now while Coach Adelman's out. He does all the guards. And so we will talk to them in skill sets. But then beyond that, we get into who they are and who they will react to more. Meaning, do you react more to a father figure? Do you react more to a peer? Do you want a buddy? Do you need a mentor? Do you need an uncle? What kind of a relationship can we get you to really listen to what we're talking about? So we are coming in psychologically trying to align with these guys, because a lot of the things that we need to teach are not on the skill side. Clearly we need to develop all aspects, strength and conditioning and all their skills, and we do all that very well. That's the easy stuff. The harder stuff is to get them to understand their role and what's expected of them, and to be satisfied with their role, and to understand how they have to be a good teammate so they can be predictable, so their teammates can trust them, and so on and so forth. So the things that I have seen here, and when I go to a teacher conference and I come away going, wow, this teacher really gets my son. Our job is the same thing. We have to get these young men so that we can get them to perform at this level. We have to really, really understand them. This is also tremendously important in the scouting aspect. So prior to us bringing a player on board, we have to know them very, very well, because we're trying to predict, and we're talking about millions and millions of dollars that we're going to bet on this player to bring them on board. So to understand them from their skill set, that's easy. All of us can do that. Again, I pretend not to be an expert. I'm a fan like all of you, but we all come watch the NC2A tournaments, and we can see what these guys can do. Maybe in some cases we're a little ahead of the curve than average basketball fan, because we're watching players in Russia. We've got Alexei Shved out of Russia, and around the globe. But for the most part, the skills are easy to see. We can all see them and all see how high they can jump, how well they shoot, how fast they run. The stuff we're trying to predict is who are they, and how are they going to perform under the challenges that go on in the NBA season. It's a tough environment, and we have to be able to predict how are these guys going to react, because there's a couple different factors that you're looking for in a player. Consistency, as I said clearly, but one of the big ones is, I love this word. This is the coaches. This is an NBA coach word. They're motor, M-O-T-O-R. They're motor. And what motor is it's your heart, it's your effort, it's your ability to keep playing despite the fact that you are so tired, you're all dinged up, it's the fourth quarter, you've already played 40 minutes, and you're out of gas, and then we go into overtime, and you're going to keep going, and you're going to keep giving us 100% effort. That's a hard thing to get out of young people. And we have to be able to predict, are you going to be able to get there or not? And we get that right very seldom. We predict a lot of players can come into our environment and live at that level, and they can't. It's a hard thing. That's what the pros are all about. The people who thrive and become the pros that you're all used to watching, they have that motor. We have to be able to predict that. We have to get to know these players and be able to understand if they can perform at that level. So we spend so much time getting to know these individuals so that we can reach them with regards to these aspects. One of the other things I'd say, just to touch on another aspect, and I just tell you that I have these experiences constantly here at Blake, where I walk away and I'll go talk to my coaches about something like, did you know, and I'll share something, but here's one of them. I came to a learning lunch here that was about the executive function of the brain and the development, these children, our children, of their executive function. And I didn't really know what that was, but I learned that's the prefrontal cortex, and when you start to develop that, it helps you control your impulsive behavior and so on and so forth. Oh, that's really, really interesting. And I'm thinking, we're talking about 12-year-olds. My kid at the time was 10. And it's coming, good news. But the part that was so surprising to me was when the speaker says, and that continues to develop, especially in boys, clear into their 20s. And it was an aha moment for me, because that explains so much with our young players who have these impulses and they follow them, and we try to discourage that as much as we can, but it just hasn't developed yet. So that was a long conversation with my coaches. Do you know they don't have this part of their brain yet? We've always suspected that, but it's true. So at any rate, it's just been an incredible path here for me and my son at Blake, because we have these kind of experiences, and we just see the similarity between what you do, Dr. Stavny, and what we do is that, we are in the business of unlocking the potential. We have these superlative athletes, and men and women, our Lynx and our Timberwolves, these superlatively skilled people, and we have to unlock their potential. No different than you are with the children here. You're trying to unlock their potential, and so I've really enjoyed this experience while we've been going all the way up through 6th grade now. So I think before we transition to questions and things like that, I will give you a brief overlook of our teams and what we're kind of focused on now. With our Lynx, we're very proud of our women, and we just love this team. 2 seasons ago, we had this wonderful, I call it a Cinderella season, where we went from a team that didn't make the playoffs, excuse me, to a team that won the championship. And that was one of those incredible seasons. And if you're in a position like mine, you realize how rare that is. And so thankfully, I'm mature enough that I was able to see it coming and just say, enjoy this, really enjoy this, because it doesn't happen often. but the women were just spectacular. And for me, it was such a rewarding season because the Lynx are a labor of love for us. We'll never make money on this team. This is not about a for-profit venture, I promise you. It is something that we love doing, and we love supporting women's sports at that level. To be able to have a pro women's sport team here in the Twin Cities, we're very proud of that. And so I loved the watching what the team was doing. When we talk about collaboration, they were at a level that was unbelievable. The ball movement, scoring, they were unstoppable. And then we, at breaks in the action, I loved watching the crowds. The dads with the daughters, the families, the fans, the crazy fans. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience for us. Excuse me. So, so last year we came back and we discovered a couple things. Last summer, we discovered a couple things that it's hard to repeat as the reigning champions. That's really tough because a couple things. One, every team comes out and they give you their A game. They know you're the reigning champs and they want to knock you off your pedestal. So that was tough. Two, the magic's a little bit gone. You never get to do something, for the first time twice, clearly. So we came back, and all that sort of magic that buoyed us in our Cinderella season, now it was work. Now we had to go out there, and we'd forgotten, because it was so fantastic in the first season where we won the championship, we'd forgotten how much work it was. And so the women really, it was more of an effort for them. And then the third thing was the Olympics. These ladies, they play year-round. Like right now, they're all in Europe. And they play year-round, and so that when they come into training camp, they might be coming right out of the playoffs of the Euro Leagues. So playoffs, you know how intense playoffs are. They come right into training camp, which is not a cakewalk. And then we break for the Olympics, and our three stars, Maya Moore, Simone Augustus, and Lindsay Whalen, they go off to the Olympics. They go into Olympic training camp and right off to the London Games. They win gold. We're proud as heck of them. We're so pleased to be able to bring that back to Minnesota. But when they come back, they're tired. They are really, their legs are getting worn out. And we go into the playoffs, and the playoffs were a struggle for us. We had the best record in the league. We went all the way to the finals, but we didn't win it. And so our goal now is we're going to go back. We're going back after it next season. Our big challenge is going to be at center. Taj McWilliams-Franklin, she is going to be retiring. She's a coach now at Rice, and so she's going to be retiring. And so that's going to be the big position that in our off season we're going to be looking to replace her. And it's going to be a challenge for us. We got to get a really good center because we have Brittany Griner from Baylor. She's going to be picked number 1 by Phoenix. Phoenix has Diane Taurasi, one of the best guards in the league, another Olympian gold medal winner. And so we'll have a point guard center combination in Phoenix that's going to be unstoppable. That's going to be our challenge in our division to get through Phoenix. So that's going to be the off season for us, looking for a really fine center to bring back onto the team. Let's move to the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves, we're having one of the most frustrating seasons, I got to tell you. We have a team that we're so proud of what we brought together as fantastic core. The best part right now for me is that we have one of the finest head coaches in the league and one of the finest all-time head coaches. And that makes my life so much easier. When you have a good coach, everything goes much smoother. It's if any of you were ever to lose your minds and decide you wanted to buy a pro sports team, the number one thing you got to get right is you got to get your head coach right. Because what that does for you, it makes all aspects of the business easier because it gives you the identity that you can build around. So now, with Coach Adelman and with our core players of Kevin Love and Ricky Rubio and Nikola Pekovic, who to me is tremendously important, but so is Andrei Kirienko, we have a core players, a style of playing, a defined sort of identity that allows our scouts to know what we're looking for and really try to conform to, allow us to look when we're looking at free agents, what to bring together. But we have the core and we have all these players except for Nikola. That's going to be my challenge again in the off season. Nikola is in the last year of a contract, but all the others we're going to have for multiple years here. So this is a good time to come on board and watch us. But Nikola Pekovic is our, from Montenegro, he's our center, and this kid has a motor. On top of being huge and very strong, and all the other centers hate playing him because they all get beat up by this kid. He is so strong. But our goal is going to be to keep him on the team, and it's going to be a real challenge because in our salary structures, we're only allowed so much money that we can spend on these guys, and we're going to have 3 maxed out players, and that's going to be a real challenge to figure that out. We're scared to death of the other teams that are going to come after Nikola. Orlando lost Dwight Howard. They're going to be looking for a big center, and Nikola's one of the top 5 now in the league. He's averaging 19 points, 7-8 rebounds a game. He's a monster, and so he's going to be in demand, and we're going to be working real hard to keep him on our team. So that's where we're heading with the off season for the Timberwolves. And the only thing I'd say with all the injuries we've had is it's been tough for us. We're seeing how deep the bench is because we're still in a playoff race. We think we can still make the playoffs. That's our intention. And that's thanks to the depth we have on our bench. But just watch out for this team. When we get healthy, Ricky's on his way back. When we get healthy, this team is going to be the same thing as what happened with the Lynx, I think. That, the Lynx in the season before our championship season, we had Maya, and she was in her rookie season, and we had Simone, and we had Lindsay. But we were dinged up. Simone was injured and so on and so forth. But they got healthy, and the next season was look out. Here they come. So I think we're teed up like that, and this is a good time for you to get involved and watch our team, and we certainly appreciate it that you would follow us. But when we get this team healthy, I think we're going to be a force for a little while to come, and we're really proud of that. So I think with that, if I look at the clock, we're probably in a place where, what do you think? Is this a good time to take some questions? Yes, sir.
When you look at the NBA, there's so few player spots available given the conscious population throughout the world, like silver spots. So the average NBA player, what's your opinion? How long do they last? Unfortunately, there's so much pressure, new talent coming on all the time. And you have to handle that. You've got all this new talent coming on. You're evaluating that new talent. It's all over the place. You've got some players that collaborate well and they're used to playing the team. To the point where you just got to move them on because there's so much talent. Gary, you lose space. How do you go about doing that? What's the average length of the average player?
The average career is right around 5 years, 3 to 5 years. And that's because the turnover, the folks who make it onto the bench, that might not quite be that talented, their span of years in the NBA is about 3 to 5 years. It's not very long at all. Now, when you get to your starters, by the time you're one of the starters, one of the top 5, those guys usually last longer unless they have a health problem, unless their knees or something like that are going to cause an issue. That's 7 to 10 years in the starter population. The overall population, there's 450 players in the league, in the union. We have 15 players per team. We got 3 teams. And so, you're right, that's a very small population, but you'd be amazed of, when we start analyzing talent globally, there's so few people that can play at this level, that the starters that you're looking at this league, they are so unbelievably exceptional, what they can do, that it's hard. I'll give you an example. When I was in LA, a friend of mine who was a very good college basketball player, never made it to the pros, never wanted to. He was a good lawyer in Los Angeles. But he played amateur pickup ball all the time, and he at a silent auction, he bought a game of horse with Magic Johnson. He paid a stupid amount of money, and we're very grateful that he did that because it was for charity. But he got to play a game of horse with Magic, and he invited me to come and watch. It was at Loyola Marymount where the Lakers used to practice. And so I went with him to watch this. And I knew Magic, so I was joking with Magic and that. But my buddy was 5'10". Magic is 6'10". And they played horse. And first thing that Magic does is from half court he swishes. Okay, your turn. But on the last possession, because my friend Michael has paid so much money for this opportunity, he says, "Tell you what, and players are not supposed to do this." He goes, "I'll take you on. We'll go one-on-one right now." I'm not supposed to do that with an amateur because amateur could trip you up or whatever and injure you. Well, Magic says, let's do it. I'll go. And so my buddy's 5'10". He's fast as heck. And Magic takes the ball in and does a quick move on him and goes around him. And my friend, who was 5'10" and good, couldn't touch this man who weighs 100 pounds more, is a foot taller. He couldn't put a finger on him. And that starts to show you, because when we're watching in any sport, when we're watching the games, we're watching pros against pros, and you sort of imagine you can extrapolate how good they are. If they played you or me or anyone that we know, they're unbelievably good. Even the worst guy on the bench will blow your socks off. And I've had this sort of thing happen where, as I'm accommodating people that I know who want, on one occasion I had somebody, a dad, saying, "You got to try out my son. You got to try out my son. He's really, 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 really good." This kid was playing in South America somewhere, then a team I'd never heard of in Brazil or something. So he thought his son was good enough to make it to the NBA, and I'm like, gosh, I hate doing this because I don't want to, I'd rather you live in the fantasy that your son could make it. But okay, so I knew this person, so as a favor I brought him in, and he gave us a tryout. I took my, one of my coach's assistants down there, and we worked the kid out through a workout. He's really good. I mean, the kid was really, really good. And he was shooting the lights out from all over the court. He'd go pop a shot, boom, 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 just shooting like crazy. Only he was slow, and he wasn't particularly good at anything except his shot. And then my 15th player, at that time, Wayne Ellington, walks in on the court. He was going to do a little workout. Does the exact same thing. Only this kid is fast. He's really fast, incredible reactions, and he's an NBA player. He's the 15th guy on our roster, and he's better than, he can do everything that this kid couldn't do. Both could shoot about the same. And that's the sort of thing that you don't realize, is how good these folks are. They are astoundingly good. It's such a pleasure for me to just be around them and to be able to appreciate that. And I have to work at it because I'm no different than you. I sit there and I watch two pros playing each other, and I imagine, oh gosh, that's, this is how good they are. And then you work out alongside next to them and see what they're doing. You're like, holy cow, are these unusual. They're genetic freaks. Across virtually any sport, they are genetically unbelievable what they can do. And some of it, one of the things I'd share with you is I got to work with the Curlin Job Clinic when I was in LA, and that's one of the premier sports medicine clinics. And they had this one aspect that was all about analyzing athletes, and they help pro golfers, and they really analyzed all the intricacies of players and what's going on with the elite sports players. And I asked them, what makes a Wayne Gretzky? What is it? Because Wayne physically was not that unusual. He didn't have an incredible strength, incredible heart rate. There was nothing really that different about him. And what this doctor said to me, he said, "Well, Rob, the difference is you may be a 386 processor up here. He's a Pentium chip. This guy his brain is operating at a different level than anybody else you know. He is seeing things that you don't know." And we have one of those right now in Ricky Rubio. Same thing. This kid sees the court like nobody else. And so for the fans, for someone like myself, sitting there and you watch him make this pass, it's like, oh my God, how did you even know that player was there? Just sees it. He just feels it. They're operating at a level that's a couple notches higher than you or me or anyone we know. They are truly unbelievable athletes, unbelievable individuals. Our women, same thing. Things these women can do, outstanding, just amazing. So when you get down to it, the population, you're right, it's not a very big population, but when you get to those starters, there's not many people that can do that at all, and we're always looking for them. So if you have any leads for me, we'll send our scouts there in a hurry. Yes, sir.
The sports writers have made much of the fact that Kevin was given a 4 rather than a 5-year contract. Can you explain some of the thinking behind it?
Sure, and Kevin has made more of that than any of the sports writers. The question was that Kevin Love has a 4-year contract. In our new collective bargaining agreement, we're allowed to give one player on the team one time a 5-year contract. And so that was a decision that we decided to go with Kevin with 4 years, that Glenn Taylor, just sort of our team owner, just decided that we're going to treat all our players the same, and so to the degree that not everybody deserves a 4-year contract even, but nevertheless, to the degree that we're only allowed one 5-year contract, and we would have players like Ricky Rubio, who's going to be coming up into that contract. We could give him a 5-year contract. Nikola Pekovic, we could give him a 5-year contract, but you can only give it to one. We don't treat one player different than the others. So what Kevin does get is he gets the maximum amount of money we can pay any team. We actually can pay him more than any other team can he's getting the max dollars, and our intention is to keep Kevin with us for a long, long time, and so he'll get the 5th year, and the 6th year, and 7th year, and so on and so forth. So it wasn't about the money, it was sort of the ego piece, and you know, Kevin off and on, because the executive function in his brain is still developing, off and on he will complain a little bit about that, and that's usually after he's had a tough game. He's a very emotional player. He's the greatest guy. I mean, he's such a sweet kid. I just love him. But he has a bad game, and then he just kind of gets down, and then he'll say stuff like, "Why didn't I get a 5-year contract?" And, you know, and our goal is to treat our elite players all the same. We're not going to say Kevin's worth more than Ricky, or Ricky's worth more than Peck, or, you know, we want to treat them equally. It's a Minnesota thing, you know. Yes, sir. What's the best advice I've received? Oh, let me think. You know, I think what I would say is, in terms of what I look for, I've interviewed a lot of coaches, and from them I learn an awful lot of stuff. And one of the things that I've learned that I apply in all different aspects is sort of like what you look for in people, or, you know, around you, people you hire, people we want on the team. And I'd say number one, consistency. That's a really hard thing to find in people. You want people that are, whatever you're getting from them, it's not all over the place, because, you know, what we don't value, there might be players who come in and they can have an incredible night, they score 30 points, and then the next night they score 5 or nothing, you know. Consistency is really, really important, number one. Number two, effort. That's something we're always looking for with the players, and I've learned that in life when you find people, and this is my message to my son all the time, is, you know, I want to see effort from you. You've got to give me a great effort. You know, if you win a game, you don't win a game, you do well on a test, you don't do well on a test, that's not going to worry me as long as I see that you've given me effort. And then the last thing is you got to work on your skills. You know, so the same thing that applies to when we're looking at a player, when we're looking at a coach or whatever, same thing applies to me in life, just looking at the people around me, and that is like, you know, if I see consistency, effort, and then I see skills, and I know what I'm getting, and I'm thrilled to be working with you. Woody.
Basketball and football, the programs seem to come up through the colleges. Have you seen, in your experience, and how do you react to baseball and now hockey, where the good kids are being pulled out of school before they graduate, 15, 16 years old even in baseball. They end up, and of course some of them never make it to the big leagues, and then they're
Right.
really in trouble. But even those that do and don't make it very long, their life experience after that. Give me some comment.
Oh, thanks, Woody. That's a great question. That's something that we talk about all the time when, you know, we do get to talk to schools and a number of situations, and it's so hard to talk to these kids who have a dream of becoming pro and emphasize their education to them, and just say, you know, even if you do make it, it's, you know, to your point, it might only be a 3-year career, it might only be a 5-year career. You have to have something afterwards. You've got to work on your education. You've got to stay in school and really focus on developing yourself as a person, because frankly, to become as good as you need to be in the pros, it's very, you know, the focus is such that you're a one-dimensional person. You can't do anything else but just work on your skill to be good at that level. So we love to see kids who stay in school, and we would love to see it longer. It's a fight really with us to try to get it. We've gotten it to 19 years old with the NC2A. We'd love to move it up higher. That's one of David Stern's focuses, is try to get it to 20, 21. But on the other hand, this is the answer you're hearing from me, and while our coaches will tell you the same thing, I'll tell you, I was in a meeting in New York among all the teams, and I had a whole bunch of coaches and GMs in the room, and they were talking about Brandon Jennings, the Milwaukee player who had gone over because he was too young to be drafted by any team here. He had gone over to play in Europe. So he was playing as a pro at 18 in Europe, and these coaches loved it. And I was thinking, oh, come on, guys. You know, this kid had really developed, and he's a very good player, but because he couldn't be drafted by a pro team here, he went to Europe. And the question David Stern asked is, what do you guys think of this? And of course, all the GMs just loved it, you know, because they're trying to predict how a kid is going to be when he comes into the NBA. So here you are already playing in the pros. And I don't want to be a hypocrite here, because Ricky Rubio was playing when he was 16. pro in Europe, and Alexei Shved was playing when he was 16 in Russia. So we're doing it too. I don't want to step away from that. Now, the European system is a little different than ours in that I will tell you that Ricky and Alexei are well-rounded individuals. They know all kinds of stuff, but that you'd want any student to develop, any kid to know. They stayed in school. They continued to study in their off seasons. Here, we moved it to 19 because these kids were coming out of college. They didn't know anything. I mean, it was basketball and that's it. And hockey's just as bad because you got the juniors. You send your kids up to go play in Canada and the juniors, and they sort of miss out on life. Now you try to fill in for that, but you end up with these individuals that are very, very, very one-dimensional. And so one of the big things that we try to do to answer to that is that we have very robust player development programs now. And one of our coaches is his focus specifically, Sean Respert. His focus is player development to help these individuals mature and grow, and there's sort of a standing program that we have where they can come up and talk to me, talk to any one of our professionals who work for us in the business side, and we'll talk about marketing, we'll talk about advertising, we'll talk about sales, we'll teach them about different things, and further we'll introduce them, if they have an interest, we'll introduce them to business leaders who can go further and if they want to learn about banking or auto sales or whatever it might be. We have a pretty wide network where we can try to bring a player and put them next to somebody in one of these industries to help them learn, help them develop. But the pressures of the season are such that there really isn't a lot of time to do that, and unfortunately I think that's one of the shortcomings that we have in the league. Now the good thing is we have a really strong pension plan for these players. If you played in the NBA for a while, you are going to have a decent income for the rest of your life. But it's something it's a tough one. It's a really tough one for us. Yes, Dr. Stavney.
Described earlier a number of the parallels between developing players and developing students, and I'd be interested in hearing from you how you develop cultural competence in your players. So something we work on, of course, with students is the ability to work alongside and work from peers who are very different from you, see the world differently, to approach things from a different walk of life. And that's certainly a relevant and necessary skill in today's world. How do you do that in your players?
We're very fortunate in the NBA. We are an international sport. And so one of the pleasures that I have is seeing how that just happens on its own, because if I had to try to program that, I don't know how I'd answer your question, like what would we do to try to develop that. But right now we're a team that's very European, with a number of players who come from overseas. We have a great deal of diversity, which we're very proud of, and we're always working at improving. And so we do have, by just nature of our sport and where the players come from who are in basketball, we do get a wide diversity just comes to us. And then it's the head coach's issue of getting them to work together, especially when you have people where there's language barriers, and then what I was saying in terms of how very important collaboration and trust and being able to be a group, how very important that is. We work so hard at having these social events with our players together. When we do training camp, we go off to places where there's nothing to do. We take them off to campuses on colleges far away where they can't go out at night and kind of go in their separate ways. We keep them together. We want to keep them together so that they bond, so they become friends, so they learn from each other and learn who each other are. So we work at it from that standpoint. We're maybe not coming to try to build cultural competency. We're trying to build team competency. But we are lucky. It's been a huge pleasure for me to be in this environment, because I could be working with somebody from Serbia and somebody from the inner city of New York or whatever. I mean, they're coming from all over the place, and it's one of the advantages that we have. And we try to actually echo it. Diversity throughout, multiculturalism throughout our organization is very important to us. And of course, we want to be able to reach these different populations. I remember one of the first times, this was over a decade ago, but we have such a huge Somali population here. And I remember with our links, somebody in our staff had sold a group night to a Somali group. and you know, they're easy to identify because of the clothing that our Somali neighbors are wearing. And they came in, I was like, yes, this is awesome. How great is this? We love that. So we try to have a very diverse staff as much as we can so that we can reach these populations and bring them into our game, because our game is very, very diverse just by itself.
The international players, to follow up, is that by design? I mean, because the team now has probably the most international flavor maybe of any team in sports. Is that by design, or does that just fall because that player fits a need that you see?
You know what? It was by design. It was a little bit of our take on Moneyball. We have a couple of scouts who are very, very well connected into Europe, and so, you know, when you're scouting in the U.S., you're not going to discover a kid that you know everybody else hasn't discovered. It's very well scouted here, and so you sort of pick a little spot in the globe where maybe you can get an edge on somebody else. And so because we're so well connected into Europe, we really went after some players. Now, Ricky Rubio, everybody knew who he was. We just got lucky. I'm not going to take any credit that we discovered Ricky. Everyone knew who Ricky was in the basketball community. But Alexei Shved, we were about 3 months ahead of everyone else, and it was because of our connections. And frankly, it was also because of Ricky, because you know we'd heard about this Russian kid, and then we saw him play Ricky in a tournament, because we follow the European players all year round. My scouts are over there right now. And so we were watching this tournament where Alexei, the Russian team, was playing the Spanish team, and we're like, this kid is good. You know, so we were a little bit ahead on that one, but we picked a sweet spot. You know, we thought we could, because of the talent we have in our scouting, and because of Ricky, we thought, you know, let's really concentrate on Europe. And we also got lucky with Andrei Kirienko. No surprise what a great player Kirienko is, but because we were in Russia scouting Alexei, we were talking to Kirienko's agent, and pretty soon we had a deal. So it just kind of worked out because we were there. So I would say that, yes, we've been working at Europe right now because we think we're a little bit ahead of some of the other teams with our connections over there.
Rob, that's great. Thank
All
you
right.
very much for your remarks. That's
My
terrific.
pleasure. Thank you.
Super.
Thank you.
Say,